Jay, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am so excited that American Rapture comes out so soon. I got to read this back in I think like May, and I've been dying to talk about it with everyone. I'm sure that you're ready for it to be out as well.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it is because it's kind of circulated quite a bit with, I guess, I don't know, book people. So, it's kind of surreal. I'm like, whoa, way more people are gonna read it, hopefully. That's crazy.
I do feel like a lot of people, or at least, social media is like an echo chamber, right? Like you follow the people that are into the same things that you are. So I think a lot of the people that I know also were able to get an arc of it. So I've seen a lot of like discussion and things about it, and everybody's just been loving it. And I can't wait for everybody else who hasn't gotten it yet to get their hands on it.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited. It's been less polarizing than Maeve, but like
Yeah.
I still am able to piss some people off. So I'm feeling good about that.
I love that. I love that. You're pissing the right people off then. Uh, so in case anybody doesn't know you or doesn't know about American Rapture, I'll let you introduce yourself and you're the author of Maeve Fly, which was a huge success last year. That's a book that meant a lot to me because it broadened my horror horizons. But in case anybody doesn't know you, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about American Rapture.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. That's awesome. My name is CJ Leede. I write horror novels and mostly am ruled by my four unruly rescue dogs. I'm on the road a lot. I like the highways and the trails around these parts, and I'm really passionate about like roadside and back road America. And I really want to like as an artist, like and as a writer, just throughout my career, hopefully paint um really like specific pictures of like place and kind of go through this country and catalog it book by book. So this is the second book of mine is a Wisconsin book. My first one was an LA book, and I'm working on more. So
That's very exciting to hear. And you're not from Wisconsin, correct? You're from Texas, right?
I'm from Texas, and then I moved to New York in high school, so definitely not Wisconsin. But I knew that I wanted it to be somewhere in the middle of the country, but not where I grew up. Like I didn't want this to feel like I was telling like a story of my own. Also, I just love Wisconsin and I love
Yeah.
Midwest. Like I think it's a really special place with some of the best roadside attractions. I mean, it's hard to say that because there are so many in so many states, but like I don't know, House on the Rock is there, and that's kind
Yeah.
of hard to beat. Um, yeah, I was going for a long time, just to visit somebody I knew who lived there, and then I like kept kind of making excuses to go back. So there we
Well,
go. Now I have a reason.
you're like it the way that you wrote American Rapture, it you never would have known. Like it would seem like whenever I was reading it, I was like, oh, she knows this place like the back of her hand kind of thing. Like
I'll take it.
it seemed very natural. And I can't help but laugh because my fiance literally just went to Madison, I think like
Oh,
a month ago, and he like it was his mission to bring back cheese curds. And that was like the most he went for work, but the most important part was the cheese curds. So,
1,000%. Did you
yeah.
get them? Did
Oh
you
yeah.
have them?
He brought some home and we actually like beer battered and fried them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, very good, very, very good.
Wow.
We still have like I think a dill pickle flavor left too. He got flavored ones. I don't even know. But
I love them fried. I love them not fried. I mean, like, I honestly, I have two tour stops in Wisconsin, and I'm
yeah.
like, I'm gonna pack so much lactate. Like,
As you should, as you should. Oh man. Okay, well, American Rapture is about more than just Wisconsin. American
yeah.
Rapture is a book that it was hard for me to read, but like for all of the best reasons because it just resonated so much. It follows Sophie, who is how old is she? She's not quite
16.
she's yeah, she's 16. So she's, she's in a very sheltered lifestyle. She goes to a very sheltered school. She's Catholic. Her worldview is very small. It's a very linear, it seems like a very black and white linear world for Sophie. And then this thing, this virus, this whatever plague, whatever you want to call it, erupts across the country and it's chaos and violence and all of these things, and just like her whole life is turned upside down. And I have to ask, like, what was that writing process like? Like, because it's such like it feels like a vulnerable story, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth and say that, it is that, but it just felt so raw. So I'm just so curious how that writing process was for you.
Well, it was a journey. I started this book in 2013 and I couldn't like get it right until this year. And even then I'm like, I don't know if I got it right. Like it's like
Yeah.
it felt like such an important story to me that it's like one of these where it feels like you can never do enough to say what you're trying to say, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, so I would say like I started this when I was 21 and finished it when I was 31. And it's really like that stretch of life is really like
Yeah.
you are so many different people. And I think like each person I was like probably did contribute to this book in some way. But yeah, some parts were really emotional and some parts like I still felt fearful of like some of the more kind of like religious things I was taught when I was young, like what are the
Yeah.
repercussions for writing this book and like
Yeah.
um and at the same time like it felt very freeing. I
Yeah.
was not able to say the word demon without like my heart pounding, even in my mid-20s, and
Yeah.
now I can. So I've actually been watching all these like, Catholic horror movies now,
Yeah.
because I'm like doing different interviews and podcasts and people want to talk about this stuff and I'm like, I've never been able to watch it. But I feel like I'm getting stronger. Like I feel like I'm developing a thicker skin here. So
Yeah.
that's been a beautiful thing.
It's so funny how it never like really leaves you. Like, 'cause I went to Catholic school for 14 years, like pre-K to 12, and my mom taught at those schools. And the crazy thing is like my family was not devoutly religious.
Yeah.
They were pretty much like take it or leave it, whatever you want to do is fine. But my, like the curriculum and everything was very stringent. And I'm somebody who has like high functioning anxiety, so I took everything so to heart,
Yes.
with that kind of stuff. And it's like you said, I'm 26 now, and there's still things to this day that I know how I feel about them logically, but there's a knee-jerk emotional reaction to those things that are so ingrained in us. And I think that it's something that you explore so well in American Rapture with Sophie. Like it just
Thank
comes through
you.
so clearly because, that's her lifestyle that we meet her with, and then the end of the novel is so, so different. Did you always know what her path was gonna look like? Like, I know you said you've written the story for 10 years, so I imagine it
Yeah.
underwent some changes.
Yeah, huge, huge changes. Like, this is one I can't even really talk to like my manager about it because he's like, "Do you remember when you had it going this way?" And I'm like, "Shut up." Because I started this book when I didn't know how to write anything,
hmm
and to I don't know, it's been a really strange journey. But um, what was the question?
Well, we were just talking about how like it's changed like over 10
Oh,
years,
the
I
ending.
imagine. Yeah.
Um, I always know how my books are gonna end when I start them.
hmm
That is like the one thing. I love writing endings,
Yeah.
and it's really like everything before that last scene that ends up getting like reworked all the time. But even with Maeve, the ending like didn't change too much.
Mm.
So, or like at all. I really, yeah, I love an ending. And
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I'm not gonna make them always, like, devastating, and I'm not speaking to this ending at all, but, and just more like Maeve,
Yeah.
but, I do like if things aren't wrapped up too tightly, because that's
Yeah. it's a little Paul Tremblay ambiguity, lingering in some of the places, I think, if you're looking for it.
I will take a Paul Tremblay comparison any day. You just made my day. I'm
No,
great. I'm good now. I can retire.
no, it's so true though. I mean, like with the few friends that were able to read the arc at the same time that I did, we talked about it and stuff, and we I think we unpacked the ending for a good while because nobody was really it meant something to everybody else, like to everybody. Depend. It's one of those
Yeah.
things that it says a lot of. It might say something more about you than the book. You know?
I hope so because I
Yeah.
really feel strongly that like as a writer, it's like you make something, but then you give it to the readers. And
Yeah.
I'm a reader first and foremost. Like I love readers and I think like once a book is in your hands, it belongs to you. And I like the idea that there would be like sort of multiple options that you can choose from. Like I feel that I know what happens at the end of the book, but I
Yeah.
like that it could go either way. And I don't know, sometimes I change my mind later and who knows what else I'll add. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on the day for me. Like I'll go back and forth with it. I'm like, oh no, it's like depending on my mood, it's definitely this one thing, and then it'll change. But no, I definitely came across that way, so I want you to know that. But in general, about the whole book, the closest thing that I like I keep joking like my tummy hurt whenever I read that book because it was just a I related so much with Sophie, and if you know somebody who is like headed down the similar road that she is of like having to confront the real world versus what she thinks she knows in her own reality, but like from her parents and from her school compared to, the outside world. You know what that looks like, and you know how like what kind of dread is involved in that.
yeah.
Um, and I have like a firm belief that American Rapture would still be a horror novel without the violent plague sweeping the nation. With
I
like
love that.
with Sophie's, reckoning of everything. If just her parents had disappeared one day and she was thrown out into the real world, I think it would still read like a horror novel. And so, that sense of dread, was that something that you had like in the front of your mind when you were writing, or was it just like an organic thing?
I think I felt like, and in general, I'm not sure that I'm the kind of person who wants to write like, moralizing narratives or anything. Like, I'm
Yeah.
certainly not trying to be anybody's role model, but um, I do think like there was one thing that I felt really passionate about when I
Yeah.
was 21, and I still do at 32 now, and it's that we put young women and young folks of all types in this impossible position where we really like tell them that their entire value is in their sexual and like physical self and their looks and their attractiveness and all of that and their outward confidence, and at the same time we tell them that like their same bodies and looks and everything else are their greatest sin and shame.
Yep.
And that is an insane dichotomy to deal with. It's insane growing up anyway.
Yeah.
And I also was very lucky to have like really kind of like open progressive parents. Like I was not sheltered like Sophie at all.
Hmm.
But like you, it was just like if you listen to the stories and if you listen to what like in my case like the Sunday school teachers tell
Yeah.
you, it's like I don't know, it's freaking crazy. I'll never forget one of the Sunday school teachers saying to me like little girls are born into more sin than little boys. And it's just like that moment is gonna like stick with me my
Yeah.
entire life. That's
Yeah.
like a crazy thing.
How are you supposed to forget that? Like, how I don't know how you are supposed to move past that casually. Like, there's no.
Yeah, no woman said that. I mean, it's just like nobody
Yeah.
should say that, but to feel that way, it's wild.
Yeah. American Rapture explores like the radicalism of like, Sophie's living one way and then all of a sudden, bam, it's completely, no rules, no whatever. And I think that,
Yeah,
you can apply like what happens in American Rapture to a lot of things, but obviously it's really clearly about religion and organized religion in this case and
yeah.
Catholicism.
And about not preparing,
Yes.
young people for the world. And exact like I'm happy you said that. Like I feel the real horror of this novel is just, like what's happening in her head and what's taught to her.
Yes.
And,
I,
obviously the epidemic becomes this like externalization of it. But like I honestly think that we just there's a lot of dark shit going on in the world and a lot of like really bad stuff that we need to attend to. And we're so freaking fixated on this
I
one
know.
natural thing that doesn't harm anyone as long as everybody has consent. And
I
it's just
know.
like, why do we make it so supercharged and weird and like horrible?
Well, and like the other thing too, kind of going back to what you said, like it's more dangerous. It feels in many ways more dangerous to be sheltered and to not have the tools to know how to handle, whatever you encounter in the real world because like this is our reality. And no matter like, everybody's entitled to how they feel about whatever, but to not even know how to handle those things, like Sophie, that there's a certain scene in American Art, and this is not a spoiler, I don't think, but just even when she goes shopping at the mall with her mom and she
Yeah.
realizes her body has changed and that the way that that whole situation was handled by her mom, and then that's her basis for how to handle her body for the rest of the novel. It's just like the lack of information and like you don't have to think that way is so harmful, I feel like. And that's like a real terror that stuck out to me of like, oh, Sophie, there's more, there's better, there's a different option than just this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is crazy how, like, if somebody in a position of authority teaches you something at that age, I mean, it is like it's formative. Like
Yes.
you are forming your whole personality and identity is. So, um, yeah, I felt even in a very like progressive household and like like I said, I was allowed to kind of like watch whatever I wanted to
Yeah.
and but even so those ideas are so heavy, and almost like Sophie's so sheltered, in some ways being not that sheltered and seeing the rest of the world simultaneously is, like, just as crazy.
Yeah.
It's billboards, that you
Yep.
always see, like um, Jesus saves above, like, the triple X store, and it's always those 2 things together, and it's like or, like, lust, whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Our mixed messaging, it's just, like, so silly. We need real problems here instead of this
Yes.
dumb made up one.
I agree. Yeah. But the good news is that you wrote this character in American Rapture, Cleo, who quite literally moved me to tears because she is somebody who quite literally to me reads as the embodiment of grace. Like if we're going to talk about faith and religion, Cleo is grace because she is forgiveness and she is being kind to yourself. And she approaches Sophie in a time of crisis and kind of imparts her wisdom to her. And not in a way that's forceful, not in a way that Sophie has to take it, in a way that's, it's her choice. And that was just so, so beautiful to me. I just want to like pick your brain about how you created Cleo.
Well, I think, like, Sophie is kinda like the kid I once was who, like, I wish somebody had said these things to me, and I
Yeah.
think Cleo is, like, she's cooler than me, but I was just trying to think like what would I say to my younger self, And I think that's and then I put those words in the package of somebody like super groovy and beautiful and well dressed in the apocalypse. I don't know. I think like having that like older cool role model figure or even just seeing one person who lives differently than you do or kind of thinks differently than you do is a really big deal in a person's life or can be.
Yeah, no, and that comes through, I think, definitely in American Rapture. And then kind of to, span back out thematically about the whole book, I couldn't help but think about kind of like overall the dread made me think of like Pet Cemetery because it just like it's one of those things like it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse, but it's like how worse is it going to get? And then the other part is Carrie because,
Of course,
Carrie
yeah.
yeah, that it seems like, and I wasn't sure if that was something that I'm sure you've heard it before now that's been kind of a
Yeah, I wasn't the weird thing is, like, I wasn't really thinking about Carrie when I wrote this. I mean, you never know, like, you take in so much information all the time, and
yeah.
you never know what in the back of your brain is like, "Oh, maybe I can, like, play with that." But I read Carrie for the first time, in the last couple years, and then I reread it recently,
Hmm.
like, with this book coming up, and it is cool to see, like, it is really a story about, like, the dangers of, like, repression
Yeah.
and, like, shame and, like, like, telling a young woman who's like sort of becoming her more powerful adult self, um, that actually she needs to kind of not only fight that, but there's something wrong with her for it happening, and then that creating this like growing kind of tension that ends up kind of
Ye-
exploding. And also just being a teenager fucking sucks.
Oh my
It is
God,
like
yeah.
so awful, right? Like for anyone, I think it's the worst thing. So
It is.
just to survive like mean girls at school or like mean anybody and figuring out how to like have friendships, figuring out all different types of relationships and who you are and what you stand for and like anything. I don't know how teens do it now because everything is like recorded, but I know for a fact like everything I said as a teenager was the dumbest thing ever, and I also don't probably agree with it now, like you just and you say everything with such conviction too. So
Yeah.
it's just like a hard, weird time, and it's easy to get confused. It's easy to have a million questions and also to not even quite know how to ask them because it's all new ideas. So, um, I think this will probably be my only like coming of age book that I write, but it was really a fun one. And it was fun too because I got to write adult characters, kind
Yeah.
of the found family um unit that kind of forms. Like I did get to still have it be a little more adult.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine, like, being a teen now, like, with the access to technology, like, information and, like, how quickly all of that, has happened is just so startling. Like, I just don't
Crazy.
it's a horror story in and of itself. But, I guess we just have to figure it out. The problem is, like, there's no guidebook. There's no manual. Nobody knew how quickly this would take off, and nobody knows how to handle it. And so it's just everybody's fighting for themselves and
Yeah.
kids are doing what they think is best. And like you said, when you're 15 or 16, 9 times out of 10, it's probably the dumbest option that you can pick.
Yeah, and I can't imagine like what parents do too, because if they forbid their kids from going on there, it's like, are they then not getting to socialize the way the other kids? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whoever's dealing with this out there, like you're a saint. I don't know. Good luck to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so there's another aspect to American Rapture that I kind of wanted to unpack, but hopefully without getting into spoilers. It reads in a way kind of as a tragedy to me in certain aspects for some of the characters that we meet, and then, I mean, it's a horror book, people die, we lose some along the way. However, the way that you handled such tragedy was very elegant and very graceful. And so I was kind of curious if there's like a certain way that you approach these things. Like in particular, there's one really big death, and I think that you know which one I'm probably referencing. And I know that in the afterword of the book or in the arc that we got, you'd kind of written about it. I was kind of curious, like, how do you approach that? Like, how do you
Did
write
it
that?
suck? Did it
Yeah, well, I mean, I
was it
know that it's
horrible?
yeah, I don't mean to like rub salt in the wound, like, but like it's just it came across so gracefully and so like well done. It was like so beautiful, you know?
Thank you. I think that grief is a huge part of our lives. Loss is a huge part of our lives. Like mortality is our life, right? Like
Yeah.
we I feel like I'm going to spend this whole human life coming to terms with my mortality, but also like that of everyone I love.
Yeah.
And I started this book so long ago, and when I was in my early 20s, I was really lucky because I hadn't lost anyone
Yeah.
um who I was really close to. And then in the last like 5 years, it's just been like boom boom boom. So, I think I already kind of knew the story was going to go there just because I felt that was kind of what the narrative needed. But then it allowed for me to kind of work through and process some really tough feelings. And also, just like grief can send you into an identity spiral of its
Yeah.
own, You're asking the big questions, you're sort of saying what's the point and what matters and what doesn't matter. And I think like That is what I was trying to say with this book is like we are looking at shit that doesn't matter. And not only that, we're instilling like all this fear and guilt and shame around it while at the same time, like we're no less mortal. We
Yep.
are still going to lose the people we love. We're still going to lose like precious time here. So why waste it on any of this dumb stuff that just somebody one day said we should care about? And I think that's kind of, so it felt, I don't know, it was painful. I'm glad it came across that way. Thank you. And also, I just think, it felt necessary. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to explore in horror if not death, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's funny that you phrase it that way because I've interviewed Nat Cassidy last week. And he said almost the same thing when we were talking because we're talking about Rest Stop and there's a religious component to that story as well.
Oh, there is? I haven't read it yet.
It kind of like comes up. It's not like the whole thing, but it's like it's there
Oh,
if you want it
cool.
kind of thing. So, we were talking about how horror is like this perfect sandbox of like we are the only like sentient beings who are like reckoning with our own demise. And this is a sandbox in which we can explore all of the ways that like the worst things can happen, the actual things, the unmanageable things, like all of these different aspects of it. And it's like a relatively safe space.
Yeah,
It's on the page and we can work through it and we can talk about it. And then like in a greater sense, like there's the community of it all because we're all reading it and we're all talking about it
yeah.
and all these different things. And so I think it's so funny. Y'all basically have said the same thing
I
without
love
even
that. Good.
realizing
I
it.
want to sound like Nat. Nat's great and brilliant. And I read his book that's coming out next after that, and it's incredible.
Oh, I would give a
I'm
kidney to
stoked
get my
for
hands
Rest
on
Stop.
that right now. I would give up a kidney.
It's I'll say one thing about it, which is that this is when the wolf comes home. And for anybody who's listening, just like order it now, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most, he just has such a, like, an incredible mind. I think it's one of the most unique books I've ever read. Like, I had no idea where it was going. Like,
hmm
none. I did not guess at all. If anybody else guesses, like, you should be doing my job. It's really good.
I can't wait to get my hands on it. He writes from a personal place as well. Like and it's always like in the afterword or whatever that he'll kind of unpack it. And so I talked to him a good bit about that. And like emotional raw horror, like vulnerable horror is like my jam. Like I don't care what kind of shape or size it comes in. It just that's my thing. I love that.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of it. But anyway, so I'm gonna kind of get away from the heavy stuff for a second here, and I wanted to talk to you about the trailer that was dropped for Rapture this week. That was amazing. It like
Right?
having read the book, I was like, I was so amazed by it. Were you like how involved were you with that creation of it? And
Honestly, I can take like no ounce of credit for this. So my I'm so glad that you loved it. I was like so excited. I could not wait to post it. So my boyfriend, I'm gonna plug them right now, actually.
as you
Kyle
should.
Corey, Dylan Garrett Smith, and Travis Bacon. These dudes have a company called Slash Tag Cinema.
Mhm.
And like, luckily, I am dating one of them and friends with the others. So I was like, hey guys, can you please do a book trailer for me again? They did one for Maeve. It was amazing. And they came up with the concept. Travis scored it. And then our friend Brady Jackson, who is like the world's best editor, edited and like it, I mean, that crew, they're like amazing. I hope they do my book trailers forever. I
No,
need to
they
stay in everyone's good graces.
no, they knocked it out of the park. I mean, like it kind of progress. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend going watch it. It's on Instagram and all the usual
Yeah,
places, but it's just kind of like this like slow burn while it's the act of contrition. Is that correct? That's playing in the
it's
background
the Apostles'
of
Creed.
Creed. Okay, all right. We'll
Yeah,
see.
how could you not
I know.
remember?
I'm
How
proud of
dare you?
myself that I don't remember. I'm very proud that I don't remember. But it's like playing in the background is this like slow burn destruction, like like the flames and everything, and like little glimpses of everything, and it just kind of like culminates into this big feeling, and that's how like that's how American Rapture felt. It just like it nailed it, and I loved it so much. I'm all about like supplemental things for books, like playlists, trailers, all of the little extras. I think are so not necessarily, but I think they're so cool, and they just add another layer of the story. You
I
know?
agree. I'm all about merch too. I
Yeah,
have a lot of like really dope merch
yeah.
coming.
But
Really
I saw
excited.
some of your merch, and it is amazing.
Yeah, get ready. If anybody comes to any of my tour stops, we're gonna have like I commissioned two artists to do like really cool little items, and then we also have like tour specific merch that you
That's
can only get
awesome.
from the events.
That is so cool. I love it. It's like a concert. I love it.
Like
I'm all for it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly like a concert.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. And, you mentioned that you were a reader and that you love to read. And so I was going to ask you, did you read anything in particular to get in the mindset to write I mean, again, 10 years, but in
Yeah.
general, was there any like really influential pieces of fiction or nonfiction that come to mind when it comes to
Yeah,
Rapture?
probably so many. I think Anne Rice has been like really important for me as a writer because one, she like kind of is always talking in her books about either atheism or Catholicism
Yeah.
and like mortality or immortality. And additionally, she's like the queen of eroticism in horror, which is something I love. This book is less sexy and there's less sex in it, but it's more about sex, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, than Maeve.
Yeah.
But like I'm always gonna put sex in my books just because I feel like if you're gonna introduce death so heavily, like why not
Yep.
have that too to kind of like show all the parts of life, all the flavors of life. Um, but so many of my friends, like I've been in this community now for I don't know how long. We sold Maeve in 2021, even though it came out last year. And I try to read everything, like all the
Yeah.
authors I know, right? And like it's such a wealth of, I mean, like I can't believe the horror we have
Oh,
at
me
our
either.
disposal right now. Like it's crazy. These books are amazing. So I don't even know where I would begin other than to say like and I think any horror novel you pull off a shelf right now will teach you something
Oh, yeah.
about how to write and that is a really incredible like moment to be in.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh, horror's back. And like, no, it never went away.
It
But
never
it
100%.
is. I will say it may be having a bigger moment than maybe, but it's always been like this. It's
And
just
I think it's here to stay in the
yeah,
mainstream now. Like I think this is different. Big
yeah,
five publishers now have horror imprints.
yep,
Like we thrillers don't go anywhere, mysteries don't go anywhere, romance, sci-fi, fantasy doesn't go anywhere. Like I think if we just collectively decide we're not going anywhere, then maybe we're not.
yeah. Well, like I was somebody who read a lot of thriller and like a lot of like mystery for a long time, and it was cool and it was good. But then it kind of got to a point where like you figure out the formula, and then you just
Yeah,
lose it. Like you and like and like the whole domestic thriller thing kind of came about, and like it kind of shake things up a little bit. But then you figure out that formula too. But like with horror, there is no formula. There's just
yeah,
people writing about the things that are important to them through this really unique lens. Um,
yeah. And it's incredible to that point to see like where people can take it.
oh yeah.
Clay McLeod Chapman has a book coming in January, Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. Have you read it?
Another one I would give a kidney for. I think I have an arc in the mail right now from Quirk. They've told me that I'm on the list, but I
It's
don't.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's like a punch to the face in the best way. But what's really weird about it is like Clay and I saw each other at StokerCon and Clay was like, "Hey, I think there might be something like really similar in our books." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And I went and read his book and I called him and I was like, "Dude, we were like there is I don't want to spoil what it is for his
Hmm.
book, but we were drinking the same water from the same stream or something. And I think like that was such a cool sort of result of maybe like just horror writers writing in the same sort of like socio-political time too. And
Yes.
like even within that, no formula kind of existence, like we have something very similar at the beginning of our books, and
Yeah.
then they spin out in completely different ways. And that was also very thrilling to see, just to see like my mind would have never thought to take things where he took them. And it was a very, very cool experience. Everybody read that book. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, it's funny because I interviewed him as well like a couple months
Oh,
ago,
really?
and he was like, I was talking about American Rapture and like how much I enjoyed it, and I was like,
Yeah.
it seems like there's like maybe some common. I don't remember how we got on the subject, and he was like, yeah. He's like, I feel like American Rapture and Wake Up and Open Your Eyes are probably like distant cousins. He's like, we probably, he kind of talked about it, but then I asked him how he was feeling about like the release and stuff, and he was like, oh man, I'm fucked. This is he just like went on to curse for like 5 minutes about all of the anxiety he felt about this book. And I'm like, Clay, I think everybody's loved it. Like everybody that I've talked to who has read it so far has loved it. And he's like, I don't know.
But there is something about putting out a book where you're like saying something like with
Yeah.
Maeve. With Maeve, it was like, I am not saying anything. Do you know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like, don't
Yeah.
listen to me. I'm not like I'm literally writing a monster and you can take it or leave it and have fun with it or don't. And like I'm not responsible for, anyone. But when you
Yeah.
put a book out, like saying something that you really believe in, it's a little frightening because you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
am I now? Like what does this mean now that
Oh
I did
yeah.
this? So and it's a supercharged time, but
Yeah.
luckily, he and I get to do an event together in New York, which I'm very
That's
excited.
gonna be very fun. That's gonna be a good time. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if it's something that matters this much to you, it's always gonna feel different when it lands in somebody else's hands. Because, like you said, how you feel about books once they're in somebody else's hands, it's theirs, to
Yeah.
experience and take away stuff from. So that 100% makes sense. That that kind of uncertainty and a little bit of dread about releasing something this important into the world. But I think that by the same token when it finds the people who it really resonates with, like it hits that much harder. It's so good. It's just like
Oh,
it's
I'm
so
glad. I hope
important.
so.
Yeah, it makes you feel so less alone in this world that is so polarized and so focused on all these other things. So I'm all for the books that push the hard feelings, the hard truths, whatever. Like I'm all for it. I think I know it's uncomfortable, but I love it. I support it.
Oh, I'm so glad. I that is like my one hope with this book is just that like, anybody who feels like they're struggling with this stuff or did just feels like a little bit seen. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like I'm
what?
just saying, hey there. I'm with you in this cosmic space of dread.
Yes. Oh, I wish I would like so I don't have like a physical copy of American Rapture, but like normally I tab my books like for the quotes that I have, so I just have it on my Kindle. But like I mean, when I tell you you have to scroll for pages on the shit that I highlighted that I'm like, "Oh my God, she sees me."
Oh,
Um
I'm so glad.
no, no, it definitely came across that way. But I'll go ahead and kind of start wrapping up this conversation. I wanted to go ahead and ask you what you're reading right now. We've kind of already talked about Nat and Clay's book, but I also want to talk about what you have coming up and what's, on the horizon. The book release obviously is the big thing, but beyond that, if you can talk about anything else that you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm reading right now Johnny Compton's Devils Kill Devils.
Yeah.
It's so freaking good.
I have
It's
a
so
copy of
good.
it. I haven't gotten to it yet.
It's also crazy. It's also
Yeah.
one where I'm like, dude, how did you think of this? Like, and when I see him next, I'm gonna ask him that. And he's writing like, places that I've spent so much time. He writes like Texas.
Yeah,
So
Texas.
that's also a very cool experience.
Yeah.
Really good book. And I'm also reading, I literally just started Theodore Van Al's Sacred Folks, and it's also amazing. I think his writing is like razor sharp. Like I
Yeah.
always learn something about how to write when I read his books.
Yeah.
Um, and then what I have, like what I'm working on next, what
If you're
my
if you're allowed to talk about, I don't know how much you're allowed to say about anything.
it's funny is like neither do I.
I don't
Um,
want to be the one to get you in trouble though.
no, no, I could talk a little bit about it. So my next book, the location is Colorado.
Okay.
It's dual POV. So I have two main characters, a man and a woman. Um, and it's cannibals and ghosts,
Oh,
and
hell
it's
yeah. Okay.
gonna be my darkest one yet, and has my favorite sex scene I've ever written in it.
That's really exciting. That
That's
is
really
so exciting to hear.
good.
And honestly, so I live in Louisiana and I would pay a good amount of money for you to set something in Louisiana because this place is rife with shit that is is scary, problematic, haunting, you name it, we've got it.
I would love to, actually. I think Louisiana is so stupid beautiful.
Oh, it
So
is.
beautiful. Like it blows my mind. Every time I've ever been, I'm just like, I think the swamp landscape and those like the Spanish moss and the, oh my God, it's gorgeous.
It is. It's like it's one of those things that you kind of take it for granted whenever you live here because it's like it's so hot and humid all the time and like, all the hurricanes and everything. But then there are weekends that like will go away to like different parts of Louisiana and then like you just kind of have a moment and you look around and you're like, other people don't get to see this. And then you kind of like remember that appreciation for it, in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things.
And such a unique landscape. Like there's
Yeah.
not like swampland doesn't really extend super far into the
No.
country. You know what I mean? Like it's a pocket.
Yeah.
So I think it's very special.
Yeah, I'm all for like more Louisiana horror. Daniel Crouch just had Pay the Piper come out. That's actually set like in South Louisiana,
Have
and
you read it? I haven't read it yet.
I really enjoyed it. And like it's so creepy. He sets it in this like fictional little Cajun town, but like the bayous and like bays and waterways are like very similar, if not like some of them exactly near where I grew up. Because I'm
Whoa.
from like an hour south of New Orleans. So I was like, Daniel, did you what do you like where did you go to, whatever. But it was part of Romero's manuscript as well that he found, so he's kind of like finishing Romero's stuff. So I don't know. They're neither one of them are from there, but they nailed a lot of it. It was very atmospheric and it was very accurate.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go read that immediately. And I will say I do have a dream of one day like renting a house in New Orleans for like 3 months
Oh
and writing
yeah.
stuff there. So I'll hit you up.
Yeah, getting like all the pretty balcony, like the wrought
For
iron
sure.
works,
Very
like just sitting out there.
haunted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know a few places like that. Oh man. Well, thank you so much, CJ, for your time. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up or discuss in regards to American Rapture, Maeve Fly, anything else? I know you have book tour coming
Um,
up.
yeah, please stop by. I've got a lot of tour stops coming, which I'm very lucky and very excited about. So I think I'm hitting like some Midwestern states, Texas, New York, California, I don't know, all over. Florida.
The
I'm
list
really
was long
excited.
when I looked. It was a long list.
Yeah, please come out. I want to meet everyone. It's like, I think that's one of the great joys of like getting to experience all of this is just getting to meet people like you, like getting to, kind of like have this community keep expanding because we are all mostly like pretty
Yeah.
like-minded folks and it's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that American Rapture is a very important novel. I think that it's like finding the people that it needs to find. Like speaking for myself, it means a hell of a lot to me. And like, barring something life-changing, it's probably going to be my book of the year. I have never been like so emotionally wrecked.
Wow.
I have never been so emotionally wrecked by a story before. It landed in all the right places for me. And I just hope that everybody else finds the same things that I did because I love it so, so much. And I am so excited for everybody to actually get their hands on it
Thank you.
anytime. So for now, CJ, thank you so much for your time, and I hope that we get to chat again sometime in the future
Thanks,
about
me too.
about the cannibal ghosts in particular in
About the
Colorado.
cannibal ghost.
Thank you so much.